Hello and welcome to the Blender 2.9 tutorials brought to you by Royalux Creative Agency. In this series of tutorials, we're going to cover most of Blender's features and options necessary for beginners and professionals to work with Blender. The good news is you don't need any prior knowledge or experience working with any 3D softwares. All you need to do is to subscribe to our channel, follow the tutorials, and practice after each session. Please leave us comments if you have any questions or suggestions. Now, let's begin. If you already installed Blender, this is the first thing you see if you run it. And if not, you just need to go to blender.org and click on download Blender 2.9 and then install it and then you can run it. So as you can see, you have a couple of options here. Your recent files, so if you've already worked on some project, this is where you can see them as a recent project, so you can open it directly. And if not, you can choose from one of these options that we have on the left: general, 2D animation, sculpting, VFX, and video editing. So for now, we're gonna start with general, and later on we're planning to upload some other tutorials for 2D animation if you're interested in 2D animation. But for now, let's just click on general, and this is what you're going to get. Let's just start with 3D viewport area. This is the area that you're gonna spend your time with when you're working with Blender. And there are a couple of things that can make your job a bit easier. For example, splitting the screens. And for that, you need to bring your mouse to one of the corner, let's say top right corner. And as you can see, my pointer doesn't change. And why is that? Because you have to left click on viewport one time and then bring it to that corner. Now you see the pointer changed its shape. So now you have to left click and just drag it. As you can see, now you have two different view of the same object. And how that can help you? Let's say you're working on this object and you're making changes to this object. On the left side, you see it from the, let's say, front. On the right side, you can change your viewport to the back. Now you have two different angles of the same object, and you can do it as many times that you want. You can bring this corner and bring it up. You can take, let's say, this corner and bring it down. And the question is now how we can get to the first point that we were from the beginning. So you have to join this area if you want to have just one single viewport. And for that, you have to bring your mouse to the edge of the, like where the windows have been splitted. So right click and then join areas. And then you can choose which area you're gonna get rid of it. So let's say we're gonna join this left one to the right one, and then you click. And as you see, the second part is gone now. You have to do the same thing for each of them. And by the way, you can't join single area like this to splitted area like this. If you click on it, you won't see the join area. So what you need to do is you have to join these two areas first, like this, and then you can join these two. So now we got back to where we were from the beginning. And there is another option for doing that, and that is, let's say, bring your mouse here, right click and click on vertical split, and then you see this line, you can bring it where you want and then left click again. Now you have two areas again. This is the same as before, so you have to right click, join areas, and that's it. Now let's navigate through our 3D viewport area. But before that, let me explain what we see here. We have one camera, one light, and one cube, which is our object, and we have three different colored lines, and they represent each axis of 3D dimension. Green is our y-axis, red is our x-axis, and blue is our z-axis. And there are three different commands to move around this 3D area. One is orbit, which you can move around the object with a fixed distance, and you literally can't orbit around the object, go down and up, but as you see, your distance is fixed. And to do that, you just need to hold your middle mouse button and just move it. Second option is zooming. We can zoom into the object and zoom out from the object. And to do that, you have to scroll your middle mouse button, or you can click on Control on your keyboard, actually keep the control, and then with your middle mouse button you can move back and forth in order to zoom in and zoom out. And the third option is panning, which you can hold the shift on your keyboard, and again with your middle mouse button clicked, you can move your mouse and go right, left, top, and bottom. So these are the main three moves that basically cover the whole area of your 3D viewport. But you can access this move through different areas of the Blender. Like you can go to View here on your top left, and then go to Viewpoint, and as you can see, you have top, bottom, front, back, right, left. And for top, if you press top, you'll see your object from the top. And let's say if you press front, you see your object from the front, obviously, and there are shortcuts for that, which is the numbers on your numeric pad on your keyboard, which you can press like 7, 1, 3, and see your object from different angles. And if you don't have numeric pad on your keyboard, there's one thing you can do. Go to Edit, and then go to Preferences, and then go to Input on your left side, and you see the option here, Emulate Numpad. Click that, activate it, and then close it. So now you can use the numbers on your keyboard, on the top part of your keyboard, to do the same thing. Like if you press 1, 3, 7, 5, and you can see your object from all different angles. And let's say you were exploring in your 3D viewport area, and you panned here, and you moved up there, and you came here, and you lost your object. And the easy way to go back to your object, if you can't find it, just press the home key on your keyboard, and then there you go, you see the object. You also can go to View and Frame All, do the same thing. Let's say you're lost here, you don't know where your object is, you're going like around yourself, so you go to View and then Frame All, and you come back to your object. So this is I would say all the options to navigate through your 3D viewport area. When we are in object mode, we have three different commands that we can work with, which you can find them in this toolbar here on your top left side of the viewport. And If you don't see the names, just bring your mouse close to this toolbar until the pointer changes its shape. But if it doesn't, again, left click on the viewport once and then bring it back again to this toolbar, and you see the pointer has changed. Now click and drag it. So now you see all these names that you can work with. Now let's play around with our objects. As you can see, when you open the Blender, you have three different objects: a cube, which is your main object, a camera, and a light. And if you want to delete any of these objects, you simply have to left click on the object and press delete key on your keyboard. And if you made a mistake, you can use Ctrl Z to bring it back. There's another way to delete an object in Blender, and you just need to select the object and press X key on your keyboard. It asks you if you want to delete the object, and if you press delete, the object will be deleted, and again you can bring it back with Ctrl Z. Now that we know how to delete an object, we want to see how we can add an object into our viewport. So let's delete the cube that we already have, and you just need to go to top left corner of your 3D viewport and press add. And as you can see, you have many options here like mesh, curve, light, camera, but for now we're going to focus on mesh. And if you go to mesh, again you have options here like plane, circle, cube, cylinder, and we're gonna select cube again. And as soon as you select cube, you'll see a menu bar on your bottom left side of the viewport, and in that menu bar you can change parameters of your newly added object. Let's say you can change the size, you can change the location, and you can rotate the object. But keep in mind, as soon as you click on your viewport, that menu bar is gone and you don't have access to that menu bar. So let's delete this cube again and let's bring it back again to where it was. Okay, and by the way, if you don't see this menu bar on your bottom left side, maybe it's closed like this, and you can always open it before making any changes to your object. You'll see this menu bar. Okay, now let's add another object. Let's add a cylinder. Okay, as you can see, we don't see the cylinder that we added. And the reason is they're both on the same location. Why? Because you see this little circle here? This is our 3D cursor. And wherever this 3D cursor is, if you add an object, this object will be added to that location. So right now, our cylinder is inside the cube. So we have two options. Either we have to move our object, or we have to move the 3D cursor before adding a new object. So we already have the cylinder inside the cube. So let's try and move the cube so we can see our cylinder. Okay, on your top left side of the viewport, you see you have a couple of options. Basically, we have three important commands when we are in object mode, which are move, rotate, and scale. These are the three things that you have to get yourself familiar with, and you have to practice working with them as much as you can. Let's start with move option. When you select the move command and you select your object, you see these different arrows here which are aligned with your 3D axis. And if you click on each arrow, grab it and move it, you'll see the object would move along the axis: y-axis, x-axis, and z-axis. You also have another option to move the object, which is to click on the circle here, grab the object, and move it wherever you want. But keep in mind, this is the 3D view area, so you might think that you're moving it to the right or left, but actually there are 3 dimensions. So like you see, the cube here is much below the cylinder here. So make sure that you move your object correctly. So there's one more shortcut to move the object, which is to, let's say, let's change the command to select box here. Okay, we're not on move command anymore, so we're gonna select this object and we're gonna press G key on your keyboard. Now you see my pointer has changed. Now if I move the mouse, it's gonna move the object to wherever I want, and let's say I want to put it here. So if I left click, the object will be moved to here. So the shortcut to move is G. And now let's say I want to use the shortcut, but I want to move this object just in x-axis. So what I'm gonna do is press GX on my keyboard, and then it just moves along the x-axis, and I can't move it to in y-axis or even z-axis. So if I left click on it again, it's gonna stay wherever I want. Now that we know how to move the object, let's change the size of the object. So let's go back to that toolbar on your top left corner of the 3D viewport, and let's select the scale. And after you select the scale, you can select one of these objects. Let's again select the cube, and as soon as you select the cube, you see those 3 different lines. They're not arrow anymore because you're not moving them. It's a scale. So we're gonna do the same thing. Let's click on the green one, which we're gonna scale it in along the y-axis, and just click and drag it, and you see the cube is expanding through y-axis. Okay, and you can do the same thing with the x-axis, and you can do the same thing with z-axis. And let's say we're gonna keep the ratio and just make the size of the cube bigger. So you have to click on this circle here, grab it, and drag it to make the cube bigger or smaller. If you move the mouse like in and out, you can see the cube size is changing. Okay, and you can do the same thing with the cylinder here. You can scale it in z-axis, you can scale it in x-axis, which is gonna deform the cylinder and is not the cylinder anymore. So let's Control Z, bring it back to cylinder, and then you can grab this white circle, click on it, and drag it to wherever you want. Now we have a bigger cylinder here. And let's select the cube, for example, and click on S on your keyboard, and if you move your mouse, you'll see the whole size of the cube will change. And let's say I want to scale it in Z-axis, so I click on S and then Z, and if I move the mouse, you see the cube will be scaled in Z-axis. Same thing for other axes like X and SY for Y. And as soon as you click it, it's going to be in that size. The third, and not the last command, but let's say the third main command that we're going to work with is rotate. So it's basically it's the same process that we did for moving and scaling the object. If you click on rotate on the toolbar on the left side and select your object, you see these three different colors again. And if you click on let's say the green one and grab it and move your mouse, you see the object will rotate in y-axis or in x-axis or even z-axis. And the shortcut for that would be select the object, R will rotate it in whatever direction it is that you want if you move your mouse, or you can press RX, it will rotate it in x-axis, or RZ in z-axis. So these were the three main commands that we're gonna mostly work with for next couple of tutorials. And so one thing that I don't want to miss out is here on the toolbar, on the top side of the toolbar, you have the select box. So you can select each object separately here. And if you want to select two objects at the same time, all you need to do is press the shift on your keyboard and select the second one. So now two objects has been selected. As you can see, the one is red and the other one is yellow, so it shows that the cylinder is the second one. So let me add another object. You know what, let's delete these objects and let's add again a cube and cylinder, and we want to add a cone, but here is another way to add an object. The shortcut for that would be Shift plus A, and you see the same menu that you were seeing on the top here. So we go to Mesh and we add a cone. Now let's move the cube in x-axis and let's move the cylinder in x-axis again. Now we have these three objects here. So if you go to the select box in your toolbox and click and hold on it, you see you have four options: tweak, select box, select circle, and select lasso. So these are different type of selection when you want to select the object. The tweak is the one that we have already. You can click on any object which is gonna select it separately. If you choose the select box, then you'll have a box to select, let's say, two objects at the same time, two objects. If you want to delete these two objects, you can select these two at the same time, delete it, or Ctrl Z and bring it back. Okay, and then you have the select circle. Now I have this circle here which is obviously small, so how can I make it bigger? Press the C key on your keyboard and with your scroll the middle button on your mouse. So now you have a bigger circle, and you can choose this cube with their circle, or you can choose these cube and a cone with the circle. And if you want to deselect it, keep the shift key and left click on it and it would be deleted. And if you want to go back to uh, the select box in your toolbar, so you have to press escape on your keyboard, and then you can go back there and now select lasso. And when you select lasso, this is what's going to happen. If you left click, hold it, and just move your mouse, you see you can select this object like this, or you can select, let's say, these two. This tool, just remember, the select lasso is going to be very useful throughout the course. So you can select 3 of them at the same time, or click anywhere on your viewport to deselect them. Let's go over a couple of basic but useful commands in object mode. Now that we know how to add any object to our 3D viewport, let's see how we can copy them. So you can select the object and then Ctrl C and Ctrl V. Now you just copied the object, but the problem is you just copied it over the previous object that you had. So now let's move it, and you see we have 2 objects. This is one way to copy any object in object mode. So let's delete this new object, and let's delete this light right here because we don't need it at the moment. Okay, so now select the cube again and press Shift D on your keyboard, and as you see, the pointer has changed. Now if I move the mouse, it's gonna move the new object, and if I left click here, let's say, it's gonna leave the object here. So you just copied the object and you moved it along the y-axis. But there is another useful command that after we copy the object, we can move it exactly where we want to. So let's delete this one, select this cube again, Shift D, and then I'm gonna press Y on my keyboard, and you'll see if I move the mouse, the object will only move along the y-axis. And the same thing if I selected Shift D and then X, we're gonna move it along the x-axis, and then Shift D and Z, and it's gonna move it along the z-axis. Again, let's delete these 3 objects that we just added. So select one of them, press Shift on your keyboard, select the second one, and select the third one, and X, delete. So the other command that we're going to talk about is repeating the last command. So if I select this object, Shift D, and then Y, I'm going to move it along the y-axis like this, and then I'm going to press Shift R on my keyboard, and it's going to repeat the last command. It's going to copy the object and it's going to move it along the y-axis, and you can do it again and again and again, and you can do it as much as you want to. Just repeat the last command that you did. So now let's select all these cubes that we just made, and let's Shift D and X. We're gonna copy them and move them along the x-axis like this, and then we can do Shift R, Shift R, Shift R. It's gonna copy again and again and again, and now we're gonna select all of them, Shift D and Z. We're gonna move it just up, and then Shift R, Shift R, Shift R to build something like this in a matter of seconds. But remember, if I just, you see these last blocks of cubes, if I just move it a bit like this and then Shift R, the command that is going to repeat, it's that movement. You just lost the last command that you had, which was copying the object. right? So make sure that if you want to just repeat the command, you have to be aware of what command are you're repeating at the moment. We went through most of the basics in object mode. Now, in next part of the tutorial, we're going to use all the things that we learned to make a very simple model as a practice and as a way to remember and use all the objects and all the commands that we learned already. So don't forget to subscribe to our channel and follow the next part of the tutorial.